So the purpose of today's media roundtable is to discuss the independent review of the February 16th incident that was released early this morning about 10 a.m. I believe everyone has received a copy of that, so I hope you had a chance to review that, and today's our hope we can answer your questions. Just a quick overview of what's going to happen. Chancellor Sobonnet is going to open with a few remarks, kind of to give some background and overview there, and then we're going to open up to your questions. We have plenty of time today, so we'll do our best to get to everyone's questions. Those of you joining us online, there's a Zoom link. The chat is open, so I encourage you, those joining us online, to use the chat, submit your questions. I have them right here, so we'll intersperse your online questions from the media folks with those in the room. So we'll hopefully get to everyone's questions in the time allotted, so we appreciate you being there. I'll facilitate the question and answer. We have a fairly large group, so I'll call in folks for questions so we don't get overrun. But again, we have plenty of time, no rush. We'll get everyone's questions answered today. So with that, I'd like to welcome Chancellor Jennifer Sobonnet to share some opening remarks. Chancellor.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you all for being with us today. I appreciate your willingness to help us alert the community to the content and findings of this report. I'd like to begin by offering my sincere thanks to the University Board of Regents and President Solomon for their support of an independent review, as well as the team at Brownstein Hyatt Farber-Schreck for their thorough report. Finally, I offer my sincere thanks to the campus community for their ongoing willingness to keep working towards ensuring this is a safe and inclusive campus for all of us to learn and work. It is my sincere hope that through the release of this report, we are all ultimately able to take another step toward healing as individuals and as a university community. Before I comment more directly on the report, I want to acknowledge the lives that we lost on our campus on February the 16th and the impact that that has had on the families and the loved ones, as well as on our entire campus community. Our highest priorities as they relate to this tragedy are to support justice for the individuals lost and their families, and to look critically at our institution to see where our response can improve. You'll remember that in March, I requested the University Counsel's Office to engage an independent legal counsel to help our campus gain a more complete understanding of the facts leading up to and including the tragic incident that occurred on February the 16th, and to review relevant campus policies and procedures. In response to this request, the Office of University Counsel retained the law firm of Brownstein Hyatt Farber-Schreck to conduct the review. The Brownstein team was led by Jason Dunn, a former U.S. Attorney and Colorado Deputy Attorney General, John Suthers, a former U.S. Attorney, Colorado Attorney General, and 4th Judicial District Attorney, and Rosa Baum, an associate in the firm with experience in congressional oversight and investigations. The campus requested that the independent review include the following: a review of the campus response leading up to the incident and recommendations for any policy or process changes needed, and a review of the campus response following the incident with recommendations for any policy and process changes needed. At the time that the report was commissioned, I pledged to make an executive summary including any policy and process recommendations available to all. However, because of the importance of this incident to our campus community and our desire to better understand the incident, I decided to release the full report, which is what I did at 10 o'clock today that Chris alluded to. In the end, I decided that our highest priority was to share in its entirety it shook our sense of security and hurt all of us deeply. We have many individuals in the campus community who continue to struggle to recover and move forward, and we continue to hold those that we lost, Sam Knopp and Celie Montgomery in our hearts and thoughts daily. We owe it to those we lost, as well as our entire campus community, to do what we can to improve campus safety, campus wellness, and the support of our campus community. As the report notes, my administration was fully cooperative in facilitating this independent review, providing the hundreds of pages of documents to the Brownstein team, as well as ensuring they had access to campus leadership and staff to answer all questions posed by the team. Ultimately, this review found that there are ways in which our campus can and should improve processes and policies, as well as enhance existing trainings. My executive leadership team and I fully accept each of the recommendations made. In just a moment, I'll review with you each recommendation and provide a brief overview of our specific responses to those recommendations. But before I move into that, it's important to note 2 points for context. While the review finds improvements we can and will make, it does not find that any individual at this university was responsible for the violation of policy or that anyone knowingly contributed to this tragic outcome. We have staff members and faculty here who carry guilt to this day, and it is important to acknowledge that there is ultimately one individual responsible for these crimes, and that is the person who committed the crimes. Secondly, UCCS strives to apply the highest standards of training and response to campus safety. Even with that effort, this report highlights how difficult it can be to identify a dangerous situation as it is slowly unfolding, especially when reviewed in hindsight with information that was not available to us prior to the incident. Roommate conflicts are not unusual on a college campus and are regularly resolved through education and mediation. It's important for me to let you know what I won't be addressing today in my remarks or in any answers to the questions that you might ask. I won't be elaborating on any specific details of individual interactions beyond those outlined in the report. I will do this to avoid interfering with the ongoing criminal trial related to this incident. Also, you'll notice that I'm going to be very careful with my words today. That's because I'm trying to balance this university's desire to answer the questions about how this incident occurred with the direction of the district attorney that we refrain from making any comments that could unnecessarily impact the ongoing criminal investigation and trial. So now I'd like to move to discussing the specific recommendations and our response. I'm going to go through all 13 of the recommendations. So UCCS already has or is in the process of addressing each recommendation made as a result of this independent review. The first one, UCCS should immediately improve its tracking and multiple reports of behaviors of concern from a single student. This is completed and it will be ongoing. The campus was already in the process of migrating to a better software system for tracking multiple student issues prior to the tragedy. The more robust Maxient software, which allows more comprehensive and easy-to-use tracking, has been in place since August the 1st of 2024. And this is for the Office of the Dean of Students Care Team, the Office of Institutional Equity, Basic Needs, Conduct, and Resident Life reporting purposes. The care team has reported that this new system allows easier tracking of individual student issues and greater information sharing with a larger number of campus units. The CARE team has also seen an increase of faculty reports since implementation due to a better and easier user interface. Staff are receiving ongoing training to ensure that they are using it to their fullest capacity. Recommendation number 2, UCCS should conduct a full review of its threat assessment protocol to ensure it is comprehensive and includes follow-up with students appropriately. This will be completed within spring of 2025. So in fall of 2023, the Office of the Dean of Students initiated a full policy review and began revising the procedures, including the CARE team membership, their roles, and documentation. And the original plan, which would have included a full campus review in September of 2024. However, because of the February 16th incident, the Dean of Students paused that review in order to incorporate any look-back recommendations. Now that the look-back has been completed, these suggestions will be incorporated into the ongoing work. The Office of the Dean of Students will send the final review to the campus community in spring 2025. Number 3, a representative from UCCS's counsel's office should be added to the CARE team. That is completed. As discussed in response to recommendation number 2, an analysis is already underway to expand the membership of the CARE team. As part of that, a member of University Council was already added as a core member. This will be communicated to the campus community along with other recommendations, including more expanded membership in spring 2025. Recommendation number 4, the CARE team should document its discussions more thoroughly, particularly in cases where multiple behaviors of a single student are noted. The new Maxient system that I was speaking of earlier, that system was designed with an EBITDA threat assessment tool in mind, so that the fields that are created in that system correlate to the tool. These fields allow CARE team members to capture more details of student discussions, allowing for easier tracking and documentation. Number 5, given increasing demands for the critical function of the CARE team, UCCS should ensure ongoing appropriate support, including additional staffing. This is completed, but it's also going to be ongoing. Since the incident, the Dean of Students Office has added 2 additional staff members. The individuals are assigned to both prepare documentation for ongoing CARE team cases and review each file prior to closure to ensure that it's complete. The Dean of Students Office will continue to monitor this situation, and we will add resources and staffing as needed. Recommendation number 6, UCCS should redouble its training efforts around reporting behaviors of concern to the CARE team, and should expand the groups engaged and trained to a broader array of campus units outside the traditional groups. This is in process. The Dean of Students Office is currently recording a video to be posted online that will explain the types of behavior to report and how to report. Additionally, expanded in-person trainings on Maxient will be held in spring of 2025. The CARE team will collaboratively build the training plan for recommended use at all levels, including new employee orientation, new faculty orientation, and college and division level meetings. The university also currently offers a Skillsoft training for all employees to help members of the campus community identify behaviors of concern in both our student and employee populations. Recommendation number 7. UCCS should immediately review its residence life and housing policies to reduce bureaucracy and ensure that serious incompatibility issues between roommates are more quickly identified and have a clearer and quicker path to resolution. This is completed and will be ongoing too. As a part of the Student Affairs and Enrollment Management reorganization that began as strategic discussions back in fall of 2023, and that have taken place as an implementation process over spring and summer of 2024, the university hired an external consultant to make recommendations to address low occupancy and low retention rates in housing. The consultant has reviewed the housing contract, handbook, and internal standard operating procedures and made several recommendations throughout fall of 2024. Some of these recommendations addressed responding to conflicts between roommates and the university's process for handling those complaints. The consultant's work will be finalized this month. The university has already adopted several of the recommendations as they have been made throughout the fall semester. And the university obviously will continue to evaluate the need for additional changes in the coming months. UCCS, number 8. UCCS should increase its training for resident assistants. We abbreviate that as RAs, so you'll hear me refer to that as RAs. The university provided increased conflict management training for the RAs in fall of 2024, providing more foundational knowledge as well as more practice through role playing. As the university continues its reorganization of residence life and housing as part of that bigger reorganization I talked about earlier, it will implement more of the consultant's recommendations that are referenced in response to the recommendation for number 7. And we anticipate engaging in a complete overhaul of RA training for fall of 2025. Recommendation number 9. UCCS should review and enhance training for housing staff to ensure that all staff have the tools to accurately track and report student behaviors of concern, as well as to resolve conflict and conduct other needed monitoring and oversight. That is completed and also will be ongoing. In addition to the trainings listed in response to recommendation number 6, all residence life staff have been trained in Maxient. Housing staff are currently being trained in Maxient as a result of the departmental reorganization announced in November 2024. All housing staff will be proficient in Maxient in the spring of 2025. Annual conduct training will also contain more targeted instructions for investigations. Recommendation number 10. UCCS should review its emergency operations plan. That is in process. We have recently hired Chris Parsons as the new emergency operations manager. He has already begun a review of the EOP, Emergency Operations Plan. The abbreviation is EOP. Every department that had a role in the plan from 2016 is reviewing their listed expectations and capabilities, and they're providing changes by December 16th, 2024, so in about 10 days. Those changes will be made and an updated plan submitted for approval to me in spring of 2025 with ongoing revisions made as needed. Recommendation number 11. UCCS should assure continued open channels of communication with local law enforcement. That is completed and ongoing. We value our strong and positive relationships with local law enforcement. As part of our new police chief, Diana Cooley's onboarding, which began on October the 1st, we are reviewing our MOUs with those agencies to assure they are operational and easy to activate. Recommendation number 12. UCCS should conduct more frequent tabletop exercises to test emergency operations and responses. This is in process. The university has increased the frequency of tabletop exercises since the incident. With the release of the updated EOP, the training subcommittee will establish a plan for regular trainings with a goal of holding an exercise once per quarter. According to FEMA and the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program, a training exercise schedule should only be created after the approval of the EOP, as that's the foundation document off of which the trainings are based. And recommendation number 13, UCCS should implement campus trainings on terminology used in emergency situations. This is ongoing. Currently, the alerts.uccs.edu page has multiple pages one that's emergency actions and what they mean, and one is how we notify you and what that means. That go over the meaning of each of the type of rave messages. The Emergency Operations Manager is currently reviewing options to put links inside of those text messages to expand the messages past the character limit, allowing for greater detail and information. The Emergency Operations Manager also currently speaks at orientation and other campus preparedness events and classes. In those, he covers this content. Student Affairs is in the process of updating its Smart Move presentation for our GPS first-year students and is revising it in coordination with UCCS Police. That training will include the Run, Hide, Fight video and additional education on the terminology. The SkillSoft training described in response to recommendation number 6 also contains information on terminology. So this concludes my overview, and I'll turn it back to you, Chris.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Chancellor Slobonek. We're going to open up for questions. Again, this is a roundtable discussion, so hopefully we have a conversation over your questions. So first question, we'll start to my right here. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, Chancellor. I'm with Fox 21 News. We wanted to kind of go back to the date of the alleged shooting, February 16th. I know that was a Friday, and some of the concerns we've heard from students of that process is being alerted to if there is a threat, not a threat to when the suspect was arrested, I believe that Monday. Kind of going back into this plan, something you guys reviewed in communications with students, do you think, if somebody that committed this act isn't under custody, is that still a threat to the campus? And how would you communicate to students in the future?
Sure, thank you for that question. As you described, February the 16th was alarming to everybody, and those are difficult moments. And we used our emergency processes to help people know what to do and to shelter in place to, how to manage the immediate situation. I think your question might be more, though, about how did we determine that it was safe to open on Monday and bring our campus community back together to process what had happened and be able to grieve together and mourn together. So as the report discusses, I'll just start at the very beginning. Is on Friday, the day that the incident occurred, it was very early on confirmed that the incident was confined to an interaction between people who knew each other, and that the larger campus community was not in danger of continuing violence. And on that day of the incident, a spokesperson from Colorado Springs Police Department made a public statement saying that there was no continuing threat to the community. Also, on the basis of their initial investigation, the police had identified a suspect, secured an arrest warrant, and was confident that the crime was a targeted act and not a random act. Although I was not able to or permitted to release confidential information shared by CSPD, this report confirms that by Sunday evening, the police knew the precise location of the suspect and indicated to me that they would be arresting him as soon as safely possible. From those first reports of the incident through the reopening of campus, the report shows that we were constantly coordinating with CSPD to ensure our safety. And the one thing that I did keep saying to the campus community, that if ever I thought the campus community was not going to be safe, I would never have opened the campus. But at the time, I could not provide the information that I knew that we were going to be safe. So thank you for that question.
In the report, one of the recommendations is to update that emergency operations plan. Mm-hmm. And we know it hasn't been updated since 2016. Mm-hmm. Is that something your staff should have been prioritizing, an update to that plan even before the shooting?
I think that the update that we're in the process of doing is an appropriate update. and is appropriately timed for the work that we're doing.
And then I want to ask about the recommendation about emergency training too. When you came on as chancellor, is that something you identified as something the university needed, more emergency training?
Actually, yes. My first meeting when I arrived on campus in July of 2023 was with our chief of UCCS police to talk about campus safety, and we had a very good emergency operations plan in place that I felt comfortable with, and working towards trainings is a part of any chancellor's responsibility. And so yes, it was something that I had on my first day on the job with Chief McCarver.
And did you take action to ramping up those trainings when you had that meeting?
That responsibility was then assigned to the emergency operations manager at the time to create those trainings for the university.
Working my way around the room. Questions from?
I just want to ask what efforts were made to resolve Knox and Jordan's issues after several reports were made.
So as I discussed, I can't talk about any of the specifics, but please refer to the report because there's a lot of information there to discuss. But I think what you might be getting at, and I am happy to discuss the kind of the broader context of that, is that it is, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, it is not unusual for roommates to have conflict and to have need to have those conflicts resolved, and typically those are handled through education and through mediation. I also would say that our staff, as you can see in the report, offered alternative housing multiple times to the roommates, and the roommates, for each of their own various different decisions at different times, chose not to take advantage of those alternative housing options. And you can go back into the report and look at the specifics of those details.
We had a question from online. Let me go to that one, then I'll come back to you, okay? A reporter online asked, Chancellor, what actions has UCCS taken to address student safety concerns since the February shooting before this report was completed? So separate from the report recommendations you just read through. So I know our app and our texting and all that hasn't been updated. So.
Sure. Prior to that, and it's something to add to that question too, is at the same time that this report was being created by the Brownstein team, we were doing our own reflections of ways in which we could, I guess they're probably there.
Right there. Yep.
Right there. Okay, all right, sorry. I wanted to respond to the person online. We were doing our own self-reflections and beginning to make changes to better enhance the safety and security of this university at the same time that Brownstein in parallel was doing this report. And so we had already begun creating more, we were creating a camera project, a campus camera project, and placing cameras across the university. When this incident occurred, we were about halfway through that project. So we fully implemented all of the new cameras that are all connected and are connected into UCCS police. We also identified additional areas within our UCCS Safe app. We went live with the Safe app, and we also added ways in which students and faculty and staff who have the Safe app are able to communicate with the police through either text or through video, and even take videos from their phones on the app. And then also for ways that it's very easy for our students to be able to ask for assistance immediately by UCCS police, whether that's for a walk to the car or a more urgent assistance. And so that app has become a real connected way that our students, faculty, and staff can be fully connected with our campus police.
Perfect. Back over here.
How often do you guys consult or just do emergency drills, shooting emergency drills in specific, leading up to the shooting in the years prior?
You know, I can't speak for the time that I before I was here.
Okay.
But drills are a pretty regular, there's tabletop exercise and there's also drills that we do. And there's regular tabletop exercises and drills throughout the year. As for a shooting situation, since I've been here, what we have done is a fire in housing has been the drills that we've done. But I don't know if they're.
So the new training, we just developed a new run, hide, fight video. The CU system as a whole created that, and that was deployed earlier this year
Earlier
as well.
this year.
So yeah, since shooting.
So are you guys conducting fire drills in place of shooting drills, or are those one and the same to you guys?
No, okay, fire drills are different than what I was talking about, sorry.
Okay.
Fire drills we do on a very regular basis. Those are done every single semester.
In every building.
And every single building across the campus. What I was talking about was a practice experience where the actual experience that we drilled on was if there was a fire in housing and that it was a large-scale crisis.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you do large-scale crisis drills, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
How is that adequate to drill for shooting for students? Because, I mean, just follow my train of thought here. You need to be training your staff and faculty, but you also need to be training your students on how to respond to these kinds of situations.
You know, I agree that there are many areas that we all can improve on, and having more trainings and having more drills is part of the ways that we have committed to adding more training for our students, faculty, and staff.
So do you guys have any specific shooting drills that you guys are doing right now for UCCS students?
At this very moment,
I don't have the information.
I don't have that information, but we have a new emergency operations manager, Chris Parsons, and a new chief of police who have just started. And I know that Chris is updating the emergency operations plan, and with that comes a whole new set of trainings. And as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, those trainings will be happening at least once per quarter.
Question piggybacking off of you. You said you won't probably have that new plan approved until spring of 2025, and you can't do trainings until you have that plan approved. So really we won't see any emergency tabletop exercises until spring.
Well, we're able to do trainings on the emergency operations plan that we have now. And then the new setup, and that will be in early spring because, as I said, on December the 16th is when all of the departments will have their changes added into the new training plan. So I'll be reviewing that early in the spring, and then the training sessions will be started.
And of course, we do the shelter-in-place trainings in our practice in our classrooms on a regular basis as well.
basis.
Yeah.
How often do you do shelter-in-place trainings?
I don't know the timing off the top of my head.
I don't know the
apologize.
timing, but we can get that for you.
Okay, awesome. And those shelter-in-place trainings, those are happening across the campus multiple times a semester,
Correct.
potentially?
In the classroom.
I'll have to get you the information because, as I said, I don't know those specific examples and I don't want to misspeak.
Chancellor, I want to get your response to the claims from your former emergency management director. We've interviewed him, we talked to him. One of his main concerns was this emergency operations plan. I know we're talking about that plan a lot today. He says he submitted a plan to you guys back in May of 2023, but it was never approved. Can you speak to why that wasn't approved, the timeline for that?
Sure. Usually emergency operations plans are very clear, very distinct and short plans that are easy for people to follow. And the plan that was developed was a very detailed, long plan that wasn't as easy to follow. And what was better for this institution was to instead wait until we keep with the same emergency operations plan that had worked through since 2016 through all of the incidents, including the global pandemic response, and to keep with that. And then all we really needed to do was make tweaks, which is what we're doing right now, to the 2016 plan, is to make those changes happen that are tweaks to those plans instead of a full overhaul. That allows us to keep a continuity of operations from the plan that we had before. We make those changes, those small changes that we need to adapt to the world that we are in today, and then continue to drill and to train and to move forward with that plan.
Let's go to the left here. Thanks. We're
So
ready.
I got a quick question related back to the report a little bit. It notes how it's not explicitly said in the housing policy whether or not a student can be removed or released from campus housing or be disenrolled if the campus deems it appropriate at the time. So my question to you is, can a student be removed or released from campus housing or be disenrolled from campus if the campus deems it appropriate?
You know, I appreciate that question a lot because that also came up as part of the recommendations, is that we need to change our housing policies to make it more clear for our employees, whether they're our RAs or they're our staff, to be able to make those decisions more quickly, but also to give them more autonomy to be able to make those decisions as needed. So those are changes that we are in the process of making and training our RAs and our staff on.
So just to be clear, the university is in the process of trying to make it easier to essentially remove a student from campus
Absolutely,
housing.
yes, absolutely. It's also something that I think that the care team will also, as we implement these recommendations from this report, the care team will also be able to help the housing team be able to do that, because through the new Maxient system, we'll be able to have easier access to the data and the information and be able to make those decisions, I think, from a much more well-rounded body of knowledge and information that can then help the housing staff be able to make those. So they'll be more supported with data and information that's connected, and then they can make those decisions, I think, in a much quicker way and with the support of just really good information.
I think we're back over here. Go ahead. And then we'll back to you.
Has what happened at all expedited the approval of a new emergency management plan?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
The new emergency management plan that was proposed in May of 2023, did you guys maybe expedite the process of approving it because of what happened in February?
I think the answer is we have the new emergency manager who just started on October 1st, and his first task was to work on the new emergency management plan that the chancellor referred to.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I guess kind of piggybacking off of the emergency plan discussion, in your earlier comments about tweaks to the 2016 plan, how do those tweaks become approved? Tell me about the process of that.
Sure. Well, what happens is the new emergency operations manager is working with all of the departments across campus that were already a part of the emergency operations plan. So each of those individuals or those groups are making modifications to what the details of their particular area were. They're making those changes. Those changes then funnel up to our emergency operations manager, and then that manager reviews all of that, synthesizes all of it, and then provides that up to the UCCS chief of police for review, and then that review, that final document will go to the executive leadership team and then to me for sign-off.
And has that always been the case even before this incident happened?
I don't know the answer to that because I wasn't here before then. The last time that this was updated was 2016. So I'd have to go back and see if we have records of how that was done in 2016. So I'd be happy to look at that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come back, sorry. Go ahead.
When we were reviewing your 13 recommendations, it seemed like overall majority of them are completed or listed as ongoing. When we mentioned new training systems, new trainings itself, new personnel, kind of the review, do you have a date set in mind to kind of backtrack and say, hey, is this working? Would you like to see in a year to come back to the state, go through the new policies, have a review if it's working or not, other changes need to be made? Or what's your outlook for the future with this new plan in place?
Thank you for that question. Some of them, as you heard me say, and this is because we were doing parallel work where we were trying to fix things that we knew we wanted to make changes to anyway. You'll see that some of them are completed and we're already, but you heard me say they'd be ongoing. That's exactly what I was talking about, is there's going to be, for these recommendations, even once they have been completed, it's the ongoing work that matters. It's the continuous improvement. We're a learning institution, right? We're all about continuous improvement and learning how we can do things better. And so a big part of this is how can we have that continuous improvement mindset and be able to adjust over time and be able to make those changes and reevaluate. One good example of that is when I think of the caseload that's hitting the care team right now and the number of issues that they have to address. As that increases over time, I do believe we're going to have to keep reassessing and adding more staff to be able to handle those caseload increases. So those would be decisions that we would make over time, as well as periodic reviews of where we stand. Thank you.
I jumped past you, Carrie. Do you have one?
I'll hand it over to Maggie.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
How did you choose the Brownstein law firm to do this? Was there a competitive process?
So when I asked for an independent review of the incident, the time period before the incident occurred and after the incident occurred, what we wanted to bring in was a local firm that was reputable and had the credentials that would do this work in a way that people respected and in a way that I could get the findings that I needed to be able to work on the recommendations that we're talking about. So the Office of University Counsel brought in Jason Dunn, former U.S. Attorney and Colorado Deputy Attorney General, John Suthers, U.S. Attorney, Colorado Attorney General, and the 4th Judicial District Attorney, and Rosa Baum, an associate who has a background in investigations.
So there was no competitive process. Is that correct?
No?
Okay.
Do you guys plan on reviewing your security plan every year from now on? Or do you guys have any idea of how often that will be reviewed and maybe revised, since this is a learning institution?
Absolutely.
Okay, how often do you want to review that security plan moving forward?
Typically, a security plan is reviewed every couple of years to be able to update information. It's usually the continuity of operations portion of an EOP that is updated more regularly. And an emergency operations plan is usually something that in and of itself have just small changes that are made over time as changes happen in the world today.
I got a question online, and then I'll come back to the side of the room. The side of the room's kind of quiet. Another reporter question said, the report notes that many interviewed believe Jordan had competency issues, which have been a core issue in his ongoing court hearings, and that his emails and thank you note had alarming syntax. When applying for the university, did Jordan display these competency traits or syntax issues? Do you believe this illustrates problems with UCCS admission standards, or will you be looking into his application for other warning signs prior to being admitted to UCCS? So I think it's a very specific question about
I was going to say,
the pages there.
I was going to say, I think this is a hard one for me to answer because of the specific details that are, where's my camera? That one?
Yeah, that
okay,
one.
sorry. The specific details of any of that information I can't discuss, but what I do hear you talking about is perhaps maybe around background checks and the ways that we could have known more about his about any student's actually background.
Mm-hmm.
And what I can give you is information about what Colorado law dictates for us, and that is that Colorado law dictates the parameters for when we can conduct a background check or otherwise ask an applicant for criminal history information. So to determine when an applicant's conduct poses an unreasonable risk to the safety or security of the campus, we can only inquire about an applicant's prior conviction of certain violent crimes, prior disciplinary history for certain acts of sexual misconduct, any pending criminal charges, and their educational records related to their academic performance. So an applicant is required to disclose information truthfully and may be required to produce law enforcement or court records depending on what they put into the application. And they may be subject to a background check if they answer yes to a criminal history question and want to participate in certain campus activities. So we comply with that state law.
This side of the room, I can't remember who had their hand up first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do apologize if you already kind of
Sure.
touched on it, but you mentioned some staff members or some people surrounding this incident still carry guilt. I was hoping we could just do a standalone response into the services offered to staff and students here that are grieving through this process. What would you like to highlight for them to take advantage of?
Sure. Gosh, I appreciate that question because really from the moment that this happened, and some of you have heard me say this before, my first phone call was, of course, to President Solomon, the CU president, the CU system president, because I knew I needed the resources of the CU system to come and help us. My second phone call was to Dr. Chip Benight of the Lyda Hill Institute for Human Resilience right here on our campus. And that's because I wanted to make sure that at the same time that I'm focused on the safety and security of our campus, that I was also focused on taking care of our community members through a trauma-informed lens. And so from very early in that morning on Friday morning, and Dr. Benight even joined us in the Emergency Operations Center on that day to help us make our decisions through a trauma-informed lens. That and you saw immediately the mobilization of the healthcare community and specifically our wellness center for our students and the Lyda Hill Institute for our faculty and staff. We also had resources coming from all of our sister campuses around the state to come and bring counselors to help us with the well-being of our campus community. We for the first few days did that off campus for our students and provided meals for them too, so that they were in a safe place off campus for that work. And then really throughout the following week, we had mental health resources available in person, but also through TelusHealth, which is the online app. But we also opened up the campus for ways in which we could grieve together and mourn together. And we had different ways to do that because each of us individually do that differently and collectively do that differently. So we had set up different ways across, in the different rooms across campus that people could come together. And you might recall the solidarity walk that we had as a way to take back our campus and as a way to come back to the light of what education is out of the darkness of what we had experienced. We then continued, I actually fundraised a lot to be able to continue to make all of those mental health resources for faculty, students, and staff free for them, and have continued to do that at the Lyda Hill Institute and at our Wellness Center. So it's one of my biggest priorities on this campus. We know that we heal from things like this, these types of tragedies, individually, and we need help in that healing, but we also heal collectively. So we've tried to continue to offer both of those opportunities. Thank you.
Just for clarification, those free resources are still available to this day right now?
They are, and I continue to fundraise to make them free.
Sorry,
Okay,
question.
hand this way.
To kind of bounce off of that, specifically related to students, with homicides and just kind of like the fatal stabbing of a VAPA professor in August. The VAPA community at UCCS has took a huge hit, I would say, as of recent. And I just kind of wanted to ask, like, how has the VAPA community, specifically students, have they come to you feeling anything, or like how has their mental health been, and has the university providing any like additional mental health resources specifically for that department?
A lot, actually, and this is a group of people who I care so much about, and through trauma have become very close to. And it's because from day one, we focused on our VAPA community. And Glenn Whitehead, the chair of Visual and Performing Arts, and I have been in lockstep, as well as the Dean of Letters, Arts, and Science, Dr. Lynn Vidler, as well as now Connie Staley, we have been in lockstep to take care of the VAPA faculty, staff, and students. I personally, as did Chief McCarver and the executive leadership team, that at the beginning stages of this spent many hours connected with the VAPA community. And our students, I know our students by name in VAPA. This is 11,000 students on this campus, and these are people that I know by name and that I hug every time I see them. And we've spent hours and hours together, but we've also had special resources dedicated, and we tend to do that at the Ent Center because that's the home of where they are, that we have specific counseling services available to them and really open it up as almost as a home for them. And we've kept that going throughout. And then when the tragedy occurred with Hale Akari, when Glenn called me about that, we immediately brought him into the Mountain Lion team. The Mountain Lion team was the team that we used to run the university response to the tragedy over the entire spring semester. We brought him and some of his faculty into the team to help us determine how to best manage that second trauma that the faculty, staff, and students were going through. So it's been very connected. Thank you.
So I'm watching the clock. We're almost at an hour of this conversation here. So I'd like to have a few more questions. So if we can go right till 2 o'clock, so that gives about 8 or 10 more minutes here. So just giving a time check for everybody. So I do have one online, but let's go in the room first. So go ahead.
Okay, I just have one more
You're
question.
fine. Mhm.
As laid out in the report, your former emergency management director did file a Clery Act complaint with the U.S. Department of Education. Has your university been contacted by the U.S. Department of Ed about that complaint?
Yes, we have, and we have completely responded to that complaint.
Let me go one online real quick, then we'll come back to the room. Question is, students have voiced concern about the concealed gun policy. The Board of Regents was considering updating the policy. Is there an update you can share?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that question.
Back to the middle.
There are so many cameras. So yes, as you might know, the legislature during the spring 2024 legislative session did pass a new law that went into place July 1st that no longer allows concealed carry on a college campus. And so the work that many students and faculty were involved in to change that law did happen and was completed in the legislature in spring, I think it was May of 2024, and went into place July 1st. Prior to that, we did, as was required by law, allow concealed carry on our campus, but now that's changed starting July 1st.
That update. Back to the room here. Pausing for a second. No questions coming online. No hands going up in the room. So
One online, Angie just
Oh.
said. They might be typing.
all right. All right. Well, I guess that concludes our time together. Thank you all so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.